are listening to the Hong Kong Trail Rockers podcast. You will learn from experienced trail runners about their humble beginnings. You will learn from ultra marathon runners about their training and nutrition techniques. You will get life advice from accomplished individuals. And you will learn about all the beautiful trails we have here in Hong Kong. Without further ado, here's your host, Vince Nateri, with this week's episode of the Hong Kong Trail Rockers podcast.
Welcome to the Hong Kong Trail Rockers podcast. You're listening to part 2 of the interview with Jeremy Ritchie, one of Hong Kong's top trail runners. In part 1, we spoke to Jeremy about the Canadian Death Race, about what he likes about running in Hong Kong and so forth. In this podcast, in part 2, we're going to aim to dig a bit deeper into the way he thinks, what motivates him, what drives him, his physical training program, and so forth. So here you go, part 2 with Jeremy Ritchie. All right, so now I want to talk about your races in 2012, right? You obviously went to Kilian's camp, and then that year was a great year for you.
Yeah.
Right? Canadian Death Race was one of them, 2012, right? The second one was the Oxfam Trail Walker with Samir, Ram, and Michael.
Yeah,
right?
also the same year.
And then you came second overall, just 3 minutes behind the French team, right? So talk to us about that, your experience, how the team came about.
Yeah. That was an amazing experience, definitely. The team came about by, Michael put this together, definitely. Michael's always been very determined to do well at Trail Walker, obviously putting together fairly serious teams for a number of years. And that year he had it in his mind. He'd been doing a lot of recceing and route finding different trails in Nepal, and had met lots of these Nepali guys. And he'd put it into his head that if we were going to have a good shot at winning Trail Walker one of these years, eventually we'd need some Nepali talent on our team. And wow, did he found it, right? Like, those two were amazing. Obviously, again, like our Trail Walker team this year, Vince, we didn't have much training together, i.e. none. But those two, they're machines. And Michael had spent, months in Nepal just sort of hanging out at high altitude and running. So he was tip-top shape, the best he'd ever been, I think. And again, it's that 2012 year. I'd quit my job at that point too, right? So I was training a bit more. I was hitting those Lantau hills almost every day. So we were all super fit. And we knew it, and we're ready. We're ready on race day. I don't think we thought we could come that close to the Team Solomon France guys, but in the end, we came pretty close. Basically, Samir and Ram were flawless all day long, especially Samir.
How did you communicate with each other?
They have a little bit of English, very little bit, and that's the only way. And showing them gels, and Michael passing a gel to them, saying, "Take this, take it," and they were terrible with nutrition. They had no idea. So it was a matter of forcing them to eat and not forcing them to drink. They knew to drink, obviously, but eating was, fueling has never been a strong point of Nepali teams, for sure. And I mean, Michael had known that. Michael had been running with these guys, or guys, other Nepali guys in Nepal for months, and had seen them go out all day with nothing. So he knew they weren't going to be able to fuel. And so that was the bulk of the communication was, "Here, take this." And a couple of times, "Here, take this tow rope. I'm going to clip onto the other side," as well. I only tried to get towed by one of them once, going up after Taipo Road, and it didn't really work. It just felt awkward, so we stopped. But Michael had a couple of tows, not tons, but a couple. Yeah.
Do you remember what your biggest down moment was on that Trail Walker?
It was that. It was after Taipo Road, trying to run up through the monkeys and just being as flat as could be. Obviously, we had an amazing day to run it that quickly. it worked for everybody that day. But Michael and I were both, that too, right? Michael and I both had our down at exactly the same time. And it was the only down that either of us really had, which was fortunate. So, yeah.
The fact that you were only, say, 3 minutes away from clinching the number one spot, how did that make you feel?
The finish was bittersweet, for sure. I mean, we were all, well, Michael and I don't know if the Nepali guys were blown away, but Michael and I were certainly blown away by the fact that we could do it that quickly. It seemed beyond reach. I know since then, quite a few teams a few times it's been done that quickly or even a bit faster. But at that point, it was, 40 minutes or 45 minutes below any previous record. So we were, dumbstruck, I think.
Not too sad about not getting the number one spot just by 3 minutes?
How many minutes? Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was a downer, definitely. We knew we were close, and Michael had been trying to win Trail Walker. Well, not just Michael, me. We'd both been trying to win Trail Walker for a few years. And, to come under the record by that much and not win, it hurt a little bit.
All right, so let's talk about one of the other fantastic races, the Hong Kong 100, 2012 again, right?
Yeah.
You came fourth, 10 hours and 47 minutes. How did that go?
Yeah, loved that race. As I mentioned, it was the Ryan Sands, right? It was amazing to line up with him, and I think that was a huge motivation for running that hard and being that into that race. It's interesting. I've been looking at splits recently from that race with the Hong Kong 100 coming up again. Not that I'm planning on running a 10:47, but I have a habit of going out too quickly, and I certainly did that year. So it started off with Ryan behind, the two Nepali guys ahead, and me somewhere in between them. And it didn't take very long. It took, I think we were about 25K in before Ryan came blasting by me. Looking great, feeling great, obviously. So I always struggle on the first half of the Hong Kong 100. I know from wrecking it recently it's not that flat, but it feels too flat on race day, and my hips always give me trouble. I'm running too fast for my own good. So yeah, I got to the half that year in I think 5:09, which is super fast. But with my hips just killing me in my ITB. I wasn't into my ITB in my knee yet, but my hips were hurting. It was like, am I going to make it? Is my ITB going to go? And just being so thankful to make it to the half. I remember for the second year in a row telling Steve, the race director, you're going to have to give me a massage when I get to the half because I'm in so much pain at that checkpoint 2 or 3. I told him that 2 years in a row. But then, I get to the half, and I got to the half that year after being able to do the big climb and then descend down to Sai Sha Road. And by the time I got there, I was feeling good. I was feeling great. My hips had recovered from all that running at the 30-40K mark. And I just felt like I had heaps of energy. And you know what it's like. The second half, all the climbing, I was just able to keep climbing and keep climbing well. It felt, everything was clicking. Everything was smooth. Right up to the end, going up from Lead Mine Pass. I remember coming through the boulders that year just thinking, wow, how do I feel so good? I'm moving so quickly, like blown away by myself. Yeah. Aside from that 20 to 40K mark, I don't really think I had any downs that year.
It's fantastic. What a finish to that year.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Let's talk about your training program now, right? How do you train? What advice would you give to people who want to try and emulate you?
Don't. I have moved on a little bit from the 2007 kill yourself 3 times a week training plan. But I'm not very structured. Never have been. Really all I tell myself to do is try to get in as many hours a week as I can, and if I'm not getting in 10 hours a week on average, then I'm not doing well enough. Which I actually don't. What I do now actually is I plug my watch in every few weeks, and if it says on moves count that I've done 40 hours in the last 30 days, I'm super psyched and really happy with myself. And if it says under 30 hours in the last 30 days, I'm totally bummed and tell myself that I need to do a little bit more. But generally I'm trying to get in 10, 12 hours a week. If I'm leading up to a big race, if I can get myself to do 15 hours a week, and if I do 5 or 6 weeks of 15 hours a week, I think that's ideal. It's all about mileage, but not that I do that much of it, but it's all about getting in enough hours.
Do you do things like interval training or hill repeats or?
Not specifically. I don't do any track work. I've been trying to get myself to do it for 2 or 3 years now, but still nothing. And I don't do specific hill repeats. I mean, but I do tempo runs. Like I'll try to get out once a week and do really hard for 40 minutes or an hour. And even when I'm doing my long runs, I try to do partitions of that long run really hard, where I'll be, say I'm going up Sunset Peak and I know I'm about 10 minutes from the top. I'll tell myself, okay, you've got to hit it as hard as you can until you're at the top, and then you can chill and carry on with your long run.
The drive for that, where does that come from?
I don't know. I think it's just part of how I learned to train. Chuck was all about that when I was training with him way back in 2007. It was always, hey, let's race to that point. And come on, there's only 2 minutes left in this run. I'll beat you back to the restaurant or whatever. So all my early training was like that. It was all short bursts within longer runs.
And despite all these years, though, you still continue to maintain those short bursts.
Yeah. Not as well, actually. Not as well in the training as I used to. Maybe that's because I'm racing too much, which has sort of been a strategy shift over the last few years for me, is to race a lot and use those as my fast training sessions.
And the mental strength to actually continue on the short burst, where does that come from? I mean, when do you say to yourself, you know what, today I feel lazy, I'm not going to do it, to actually forcing yourself to do it?
I think it's part of the running that I actually really enjoy. I like pushing really hard for a couple minutes. So I perceive myself actually as a fairly lazy person. But with that, it's something that I have fun doing. Even if it's by myself, like it's fun to see if I can make it to whatever point that I picture in front of me as quickly as possible. It's just, something I enjoy.
All right. This running really fast, right? Why is this goal so important to you?
Says who? You mean in general?
In general, yeah. I mean, you're a fast runner, and you always want to try and beat yourself and so forth. Why is that important? Why do you want to?
I don't know. I guess I'm just uber competitive.
Is that in all areas of your life, or is that only running that you're competitive?
No, it's really only running. I'm not competitive otherwise. Like I'm not career driven or anything like that. I want to clarify though with my competitiveness. I'm not like maliciously competitive. Like if somebody passes me, I'm like woohoo! I'm like totally cheering for them. Honestly, I'm very competitive, and when I see somebody on a trail in a race or even training and they're 200 meters ahead of me, I'm working hard to catch up to them and get by them. But at the same time, I'm super psyched to see somebody else doing well.
If you were to DNF for whatever reason, does that really bug you?
I've had quite a few DNFs this year, so I've gained some perspective on it. Yeah, it bothers me for sure. But I'd rather definitely go into a race and DNF than not go into a race. I enjoy racing. It's the most fun aspect of running.
What about the pressure that people put upon you? Like everyone knows, wow, it's Jeremy. You know, it's either going to be Jeremy or William or Stone at the front, yeah. And then you don't feel well and you go to DNF. I mean, how much of that hype do you believe, and how much of it does affects you?
I think it probably used to affect me a bit, but I'm not a professional runner. Nobody pays me. Solomon gives me lots of nice kit, which is awesome. And Hammer now gives me lots of tasty gels. But really I'm doing this just because I love doing it. And if I blow up at a race and DNF, then oh well. You see people like even at King of the Hills this past weekend, saying, "Well, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be?" It's like, yeah, maybe, I don't know. I blew up, and it's no big deal.
That's awesome. Injuries. Talk to us about that, right? I mean, do you get injured often? How do you deal with that?
I mentioned my hips earlier. That's where all my injuries have sort of. I mean, I've never really had a major injury. Touch wood, which is great. But it's all hips, ITB, and I've sort of had an ongoing relationship with that issue, for sure. But nothing too serious. So when we talked earlier about the Needle Man, he's always been my go-to when my ITBs get really bad. I haven't seen him for over a year at this point, though.
What's your philosophy on team runs? Do you prefer team runs to individual runs, or other way around?
Races, you mean, or
races?
Races, yeah. I actually really, really like running in a team. I really enjoy it. I think more than I used to. Maybe having a super good experience with you on Trail Walker this year has helped with that, but that's left me with good feelings about team racing. In the past, I've sort of felt, oh, okay, thank God that's over. But at the same time, have always really enjoyed running with other people. I've done a few races with Jackie Lung in a team as well, and that's always fun. So yeah, no, I really enjoy running with other people. I don't know if it takes some of the pressure off or not, but it's a different feel, and I do enjoy it. Yeah.
What about your philosophy on painkillers? Do you take painkillers when you're in pain and still continue to run?
I have in the past, yeah. I've used ibuprofen a bit. I know there's a lot of controversy about that. There has been for a few years, yeah. At this point, I'd like not to have to ever take a painkiller, but I do still pack like one ibuprofen in my little extra baggie of salts and BCAAs. There's one ibuprofen always in there on an ultra. Yeah, so I'm not beyond taking a little bit of painkiller. Yeah.
Like Millers, do you have this off alcohol, no beers sort of during the racing season, or are you?
Yes, very strict. No, I enjoy drinking my beers. No rules. I tend to not have more than one the day before the race.
How do you balance your time between training, running, work, and racing?
Yeah, that's tricky. It really is. When I owned the shop and was living on Lantau and working within within a couple of minutes of home, it was much easier, definitely. And then I've just had this year off in Canada. I wasn't working. It's great. Just, chill, run when you want to. And now that I'm back working full time, it's hard. It's hard to strike the balance, but, as you know from my training hours, I don't get that many in. I for a while was trying hard to get up early in the morning and trying to get in an hour run from 5 till 6 before work. We did really well at that for a while, and that was good. I think it helped build me up a little bit early this season. But getting up at 5 is hard, and I'm not doing that now. You just squeeze it in when you can, and 10 to 12 hours, it isn't that much time, I think.
Do you get most of your training done in the morning?
No, not anymore. Yeah, I leave for work at before 7. So, yeah.
What's your philosophy on pain? By that I mean, right, when do you know when you can push past the pain barrier, and when do you know to not enter the pain cave in order to preserve your long-term running career?
Andrew Titus has given me a lot of new perspective on this in the last year, where talking about the fact that our pain threshold is much higher than we think it is, and our body's ability to push through that pain is much greater than we think it is. And I'm rolling with that right now. I think there's something in it. So being able to push through your pain, I usually try to. I guess it depends on the type of pain, but leg pain and just feeling fatigue, I think, is easily overcomable and easy to push through. Not easy in the sense of easy to get your brain to do it, but I think your body will put up with it very easily. Cardio pain and tiredness, on the other hand, it's harder to push through, and I'm still really trying to master that one.
Do you listen to music when you run or race?
I actually tried listening to music racing for the first time, just about the same time that you passed me at the LT70. So I've given up on that. I do listen to music training quite often. If I'm running alone training, about half the time I'll have music in my ears. Yeah.
Does it scare you that someday you might not be able to defend your top spots?
Does it scare me? No, I haven't given it that much thought, actually. But at this point, anyway, I'm the ripe old age of on the cusp of 41. I'm still looking positively, have a very positive outlook on my upcoming seasons. I think I can get faster. I think I can be healthier and fitter. So not scared about that yet. Nope.
What about your passion for running? Are you scared you might ever lose it?
I'm not always very motivated to train. But when I'm out in the mountains, I love it so much that, yeah, the passion's there for sure. So I don't think I'm ever going to really lose the excitement of getting out and being in the mountains. Yeah.
And when you're racing, right, are there specific people you'd want to secretly overtake? How competitive are you from that angle?
As I said earlier, like definitely I love overtaking people and running hard, but there's not anybody I've got a target on really. I mean, it's great. Competition is healthy in Hong Kong, and when you line up, you see, as you said, mentioning some people's names earlier, you see the people that you always race against, and it's really cool to run against them. And of course, as you're running along, you want to overtake them, and yeah.
So have you had any downtimes in your running at all? At times when you got out of bed and you felt like, you know what, this running thing is not for me?
I haven't had a whole lot of downtime. I've been at it for quite a long time, and have had little bits of downtime where I don't race as much. I step away a little bit, but I've been pretty consistently training now for 10 years or so. That 10 hours drops down to 5 hours sometimes a week, but really no running. No, I haven't been there for a long time. Since I started running, I haven't been to no running at all, ever. And I don't really see it happening anytime ever in the future until I keel over.
Talk to us about your gear strategy, right? Is there any sort of gear that you swear by, that you have to have when you run all the time?
I've increasingly moved towards lighter and lighter and lighter as the years have gone on. Right now, I'm stuck on Salomon Sense Pro shoes. The old S-Lab racing shoes never really worked that well for me. Never loved them, so I was super psyched when these shoes came out, and for about 3 years now, it's almost the only thing I've had on my feet. So, yeah, it'll be hard to part with them, although there are new models coming out now that are starting to tempt me.
What about the nutrition side? Are you still on gels?
Yeah. I'm on Hammer gels mostly now. I've been trying to incorporate a little bit of extra real food into my daily runs and racing. And I've moved away from powders pretty much altogether. I was on Tailwind for a while, and then was when I first started taking Hammer products again. I was taking quite a bit of Heed, and I still use a little bit of that, but I sort of more and more like fresh, clean water, and then supplement with a few gels and real food.
Earlier you spoke about, you having the mental fortitude, right, to keep going. I mean, do you do anything to train that part of your training? I mean, do you have any mental strength training programs at all?
None except for, again, in training runs where I do try to push myself harder than I think I can go in training fairly regularly. Fairly regularly, but not the last few months since I've been racing almost every single weekend. It just happens organically at the races, I guess. There's no like training regime. It's just more a perspective change, I think. Thinking about the fact that, or believing in the fact that my body can go through a lot more pain than I initially thought it could. Yeah.
All right, talk to us about the goals for 2016. What's in store?
Heaps. Lots of stuff. Racing too much as usual. Of course, the short term is Hong Kong 100, just 2 weeks away. Getting really psyched about it. I haven't trained enough for it, definitely. That moves count has been closer to 30 hours in the last 30 days than 40, unfortunately. Going to get a big one in this weekend, last big push. After that, I've got fairly regular races. I'm signed up for the Trans Lantau, which I raced in 2014 and won. It's the only 100K I've ever won, so I'm super super stoked to go back for that. Can't wait. I love the course. Obviously, it's on Lantau. And then 2 months after that, Australia, UTWT 100K. Yeah, and then we move into all the short stuff in Hong Kong, which I'll do just, to keep up the racing. And then we'll go to Europe for the summer. I'm signed up for the UTMB. But before that, I'm also signed up for Switzerland. What's it called? UTWT race as well. The Eiger Ultra Trail in July. So, yeah. 300 Ks and then the 100 miler at the end of August. And then who knows? Trail walker for the fall, right?
That's awesome. Would love to do that again.
Yeah.
Wow. Have you ever considered doing something like the Grand Slam in the US?
US races haven't really intrigued me that much. I think there are some amazing races in the States, and the Grand Slam they're definitely great races as well. Vermont scares me a bit. I know lots of people who've run it. The people I was running with in Canada, that's their sort of go-to 100 miler because it's really close. They just drive down. So I've heard lots of stories about that race, and it scares the hell out of me. So yeah, the Grand Slam probably not in the States. I'd love to do Hard Rock, maybe even Western States, although so hard to get in. I mean, yeah, they're interesting races, and I'd love to do them, but Grand Slam,
What about the real long ones in like the Tour de Jean in Europe? Does that ever attract you?
Or the Four Trails?
Or the Four Trails?
I can't say that my interest hasn't been piqued. I definitely am interested in them now. Yeah. I wasn't before, but now that I see more and more people do it, I'm a follower, I guess. I'm a little bit interested. I'll leave it at that. It's probably still a few years off.
So for anyone who wants to get into serious running, what kind of advice would you give them?
Only do it if you love it, right? And if you love being outside, if you love being in the mountains, then go for it. I mean, it's all about the mileage. I don't think there's any special formula or any super talent that anybody has, aside from maybe Killian. Just go out and spend time in the mountains. And I mean, you've come, Vince, so far. You're like a super great, talented runner now. Just from years of being out in the mountains and loving it, just being out there and putting in the miles. That's what it's all about, is spending the time.
That's very kind, thank you. Although I think I'm a couple of years away from being a super talented runner.
I don't know.
Like, let me ask you this, right? Is there any creed or motto that you live life by? Anything that you think ties your philosophy, in life and running together? I want to put you on the spot and ask you if there is something that serves as your guiding principle.
Wow. Nope. I don't have any wise, precepts to live by. I mean, as I said about the running, it's, I do it because I love it. Only do things because you love to do them. That's the only thing I can say.
Okay, let me rephrase that question, right? I mean, look, you're a successful guy, yeah? If I have to ask you, why were you successful? If you have to summarize the reasons for your success, and you only had, say, 1, 2, or 3 reasons to give them, what would you say?
Okay. Assuming that I'm a successful runner.
Which you are?
I think the people that I've been around and have spent a lot of time running with are definitely a huge part of that. And especially the people that Well, no, not especially the people that I ran early with, but yeah, definitely the people that I ran with a lot when I was starting this madness. And yeah, the people recently too. I mean, I've sort of been, the more I think about it, rekindled. Not that I've ever slowed down or stopped running, really. I've been rekindled by the people I've run with in the last year as well. I mean, the community is so passionate that how can you not, be psyched to get up and go run?
All right, so Jeremy, wish you the best in 2016. That's a pretty long list you've got there. And hopefully hope to see you win many more races in Hong Kong. And thank you so much for taking the time to answer my questions on this very cold day on the rooftop of Lipo Terrace, Lipo Center.
Thank you, Vince, very much. You're wearing a t-shirt, so I don't think you think it's so cold.
It wasn't in the morning, but...
Total pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Hong Kong Trail Rockers podcast. If you liked it, please help us by going to our iTunes page to rate us and give us your feedback. Your feedback and rating will also help other people find this podcast. Our show notes are at hikeinhongkong.com. Thanks for listening. See you next week. And remember to go for a run and crank up the mileage.